Today we're letting go using the Course in Miracles workbook as a prompt. Today it's lesson 321. Father, my freedom is in you alone. So you're free. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but you are free. You're not actually forced to do anything. You don't have to do the Course in Miracles. You don't have to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. It's optional. Father, my freedom is in you alone. So I've been given this freedom, and I don't understand where that freedom comes from. There's all these programs that God is controlling and isn't going to let you do things, or you're bad and you're going to be condemned if you don't do what God wants, and you're going to go to heaven if you do good. And all of that is the freedom we've been given to choose to condemn ourselves or to release ourselves. It's not an external God doing something to us. No, that I've been given complete freedom to do whatever seems like a good idea at the time. And so it seemed like a good idea at the time to do things my way. What's my way? It's the collection of ego programs that I have up to this time is what seems like a good idea to do at the time. So that freedom is there, and in the context of that infinite freedom, I have chosen to attempt to be separate from God. And to do that, I created a body that now I identify as this body. I created other bodies. I created a world where I can hide from God, kind of thing, and pretend to be separate from my source, that freedom. Now, with the letting go process, I'm just letting go of all of that programming and all of that attempt to be separate from that which I am, to be separate from my source. And that, too, is a part of the freedom. So today we'll just look at that freedom. Look at what we've been choosing, and we'll see if maybe we'll choose something else. Maybe we'll choose to turn over what we've been doing to a higher context, to source. But you don't have to. You'll never be forced to let go. You'll never be forced to forgive. It's just a choice. The power of decision is your own, and that's been given to you by the source of freedom. Let's do some letting go. Father, my freedom is in you alone. What have I been choosing with that freedom? Wow, isn't it nice? I've been given all this freedom. What have I been choosing to do with freedom? Oh, I've been choosing to hate this guy. I've been choosing to believe I'm a body. Been choosing to go after money. I've been choosing that I'm not complete in myself. Just look at what you're choosing with freedom. Just presuming that you're free to choose all of it, that it's just your choice. Let's just presume, let's just maybe the Course in Miracles suggestion is right. Whatever I'm holding, I'm projecting into the world. So whatever I'm choosing to hold, I'm projecting into the world. So what have you been choosing to hold and experiencing with your freedom? Is there any of that which you'd like to choose again on? Choose something else. Anything that you've been choosing that you don't prefer to choose anymore in the freedom that's been given you. So the choices that we make form attractor patterns. And those are most simply put as feelings, and that feeling will magnetize more and more, will project out and get back more and more. So behind that choice that you're ready to choose differently on, could you just notice the feeling when you're choosing that? Notice that any feeling that comes up for you when you've been choosing that thing out of freedom again and again. And could you let the thoughts drift by? There will be infinite thought forms that show up on this feeling, or thousands and thousands, maybe even millions of thought forms. Could you just notice the feeling behind choosing that in freedom? It doesn't seem like freedom because I've chosen it so many times, and that attractor pattern just is self-perpetuating. That feeling just keeps going and going until I let it go. Until I choose to let go. So could you choose to experience this feeling? Just be with that feeling, notice that feeling. Nothing to judge or attack or make wrong of, just a feeling. Let that feeling be there. And it's just a choice to let it go. Could you choose to let it go? It's part of your freedom. Would you choose to let go of this feeling? And just start to lighten up that attractor pattern, that feeling, and that kind of thing happening in your experience that happens on that feeling frequency. When could you choose to let go? For your freedom is. And even if you choose not to let go, that's part of your freedom. Because your freedom is. Father, my freedom is in you alone. So that freedom is the foundation. That freedom in God, not forced to do anything. Sure, go ahead. Choose to be separate from, pretend to be separate from the one, from the oneness, from the beingness. And so here we go. We go off to play. We play the part of separate from God, and so you look at what you've been choosing out of freedom. It could be the same thing, it could be something else. You just look at what you've been choosing out of freedom, and is there anything where you choose again? Are you ready to choose something else? And could you just acknowledge what you've chosen so far freely? And if you're ready to change it, if you'd like to choose differently, could you choose to experience the feeling behind that choice that you made before? So an example might be, I chose to get more and more and more money, or have more and more special relationships. What's the feeling that's going on there when I'm deciding that? Fear? Lack? And whether it's labeled or not, could you just choose to experience the feeling and let the thoughts drift by without following them? Just going inside, being present with whatever feeling seems to be there as best you can. And it's just a choice to feel the feeling, to experience the feeling, to ignore the thoughts. You're free. So could you choose to just experience this feeling just for now? Just letting this feeling, this attractor pattern, just start to dissolve. Could you allow this feeling, let it run, just by choice? I'm just going to feel this feeling. And could you choose to release this feeling? Freely, not forced. Just a choice. You're free to choose. Could you release this feeling, this attractor pattern behind those choices before? Would you release? Would you choose to release this feeling, this pattern? When could you choose to release this feeling? Freely. For your freedom is, you get to choose. The power of decision is your own. Father, my freedom is in you alone. Father, you've given me complete freedom. Source, you created me completely free. What have I been choosing in this freedom? If you open up and be honest, what are you choosing with that freedom? Freely choosing. Not to beat up on yourself about it, not to make wrong of it, criticize it, just noticing what you've chosen. And is there something there you choose differently now? Could be the same thing you've been working with, could be something else. And so behind that choice, what's the feeling? I was choosing to do that. And as I chose to do that before, it felt like this. This feeling was driving that choice. And just noticing that feeling. So an example would be, I'm going to make a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger business because I feel so small. I feel so unworthy. I got to prove my worth. I want approval. Oh, so there's a feeling of wanting approval. Whatever you're feeling, could you just open up and allow that feeling, just the raw feelingness of it, to be there, and let the thoughts drift by? Could you allow that feeling to run without trying to change it, dropping the judgment of the feeling, a good or a bad feeling? Could you just let that feeling unpack? And could you surrender that feeling freely? You never have to surrender. You're free to surrender or not. Just like you never have to let go. Could you freely choose to surrender this feeling to God, to your Father, to your higher self? Would you surrender this feeling? When could you surrender this feeling, this attractor pattern, the choices of the past to God? For your freedom is already here. Father, my freedom is in you alone. Created free. And so, have you noticed in some of these choices that maybe they're ego-based, coming from fear or guilt, anger or desire? So in our freedom, we created an ego and said, that's us. And then we started to make choices based on these ego feelings, survival programs, to survive as separate from our source, as if that was possible. And so here's an option. Now I would guide myself no more. Now I would guide myself for more. No more am I going to guide myself from ego, from separation. I'm just going to turn over everything to God. I'm going to make that choice. Could you just turn over all the guidance to your source, to your Father, to your higher self? It's just a choice, and it's one you're free to make or not make. So could you just turn over all the guidance, all the direction, all the choices, all the decisions to God? All the thoughts to your higher power, to your higher self? Turn it all over. No more attempt to guide yourself from the ego programs. Could you turn it all over to the divine direction? And notice any resistance to that. Is there any feeling like that's a bad idea, or like you can't do it? Or any sense of unworthiness, fear? When we make a decision, all the old attractor patterns, the ego survival feelings come up. And let's just call that resistance to turning your will over, to turning your life over to God. So could you allow up any of that resistance? It might show up as thoughts. Could you just let the thoughts drift by and notice the feeling there of resisting, turning over whatever's going on freely to your source? The thoughts pop up, just letting them drift by, feeling that feeling. Opening up as best you can, just letting this feeling come up, any resistance to freely turning over to that which granted you freedom. And could you allow that resistance just to run, feeling that feeling, and could you let go? Freely. Not you have to let go, not you need to let go, not it's better if you let go and worse if you don't. Just could you freely let go of the resistance to God, your source, your Father, and His direction? Would you let go freely? Not you should, not you need to or have to, just would you freely let go of this resistance to God, divine direction? When could you let go? And when you make choices again and again, those attractor patterns build. The attractor field becomes more and more dominant. So, Father, my freedom is in you alone. And I turn over everything that's happening. I turn it over to thee. Now, I'm not forcing you to do that. Just see, what could you? Could you freely turn everything over to your Father, to God, to your source? Everything. Just turn it all over. It's just a choice. And as you choose that again and again, that attractor pattern becomes more and more dominant. And it's a much more powerful attractor pattern. And so could you just choose to turn over whatever's happening, whatever's appearing, just turning it over to your Father freely? Not being forced to, not because you have to, not because it's better. Just freely choosing to turn it over. And could you notice any resistance coming up to that? Any fear? Any desire to have it go a particular way? Attachment to the outcome? And just notice any resistance. It might show up as thoughts, and behind those thoughts there's a feeling. Could you open up and allow that feeling? Just letting that feeling run. If we fight the feeling, we claim it's real. Could you just let that feeling be there? Let it up. When we get engaged with the thoughts, the feeling just tends to propagate. Could you ignore the thoughts and just let that feeling be there? Let it run. And could you release this resistance to turning it all over to God, your Father, your source? Could you release this feeling freely? Would you release freely? Release this feeling and turn over everything to your Father. Who created you free to choose otherwise, if you choose. When could you release the resistance to turning it all over to God, your Father, your source? Father, my freedom is in you alone. And so you make a choice, you make a new choice. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn my whole life over to God, to my source, to my Father, and with the freedom that He's given me. And so you start to activate a very different attractor pattern that's been there, but just been ignored. And as you choose, so just check in, is that a choice you'd make? To turn everything over to your Father, your source, your whole life, everything that's happening, all the thoughts, all this stuff, just turning it over? And let's say your choice is yes. Well, what's going to come up is everything other than that. To be surrendered. To be freely surrendered. Not going to be forced, but you're actually being given exactly the next thing to surrender, to turn over your will and your life to the care of this infinite love, your source, your Father. And so could you allow up any of that resistance, any of that feeling that's come up to be surrendered, that's been prompted by your choice to turn it all over? Could you welcome what's being presented? Oh, this is the old attractor pattern behind all the other choices I was making. Could you allow that to come up? Allow that feeling up. Welcome it. Welcome it. Freely choosing to just experience this feeling, which is freely choosing to surrender it. Could you freely choose to surrender this feeling behind all those other choices? Just turn it over to God. Surrender it to God. You've been given this freedom, so you don't have to surrender. Would you surrender freely this feeling, this old attractor pattern, this ego program to God. When could you surrender? It's just a choice, and you're free to choose. Now? Later? Never? Dream on, as long as you choose. Your freedom is. You have been given that in your Father, in your source, in what you really are. Father, my freedom is in you alone. And so what do you choose? All of the negative feelings and negative thoughts are part of an old choice that you made in freedom to attempt to be separate from the all, from God. Just a little wishful thought made at some point, hey, I'm going to experience what it's like to be separate from God. That was a choice. And in your freedom, it is done. And so now we look at that and all the other choices that came to reinforce that choice, make that seem possible, make that seem real. And we're turning it over if we choose to. I can't imagine you would be following A Course in Miracles or interested in letting go and forgiveness if you weren't choosing to go home. And so you make the choice in the freedom you have been given to let go of that previous choice and all the karma that came with that choice, the ego. And so everything's going to come up, all the ego programs, to be forgiven, to be surrendered, to be let go of. And it's your free choice to let go or to not. So could you choose to let go absolutely? It means whatever comes up, just letting it go. Could you choose to let go and let God? Whatever comes up, just letting go. I turn this over to Thee, O Lord. Turning your will and your life over to the care of God. This too, I surrender. Whatever's coming up. Being still and knowing that God is. Oh, all of this activity is coming up. Let me watch it and turn it over. Turn over even this to God. As you continue to make that choice, which you are free to choose, you'll get more and more of that. The more you let go, the easier it's going to become. The more you surrender to God, the greater the potential of that happening again. And so the more often you are just allowing this stuff to come up and letting it go, the more it's going to happen. Because what you choose, you're very likely to choose again. That attractor pattern, that attractor field builds and builds. So, in your Father, your freedom is. And you will not be forced. Could you continue to be free and let go, forgive, and surrender, not because you're supposed to, not because you're bad if you don't, but out of freedom that you've been given to surrender, to let go. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have the best day you can. You're free to choose.